Welcome, everyone, to today's LinkedIn Live. I'm Bruce Heckfeldt. I'm your host. I'm going to introduce our guests here in a second. Let me get into our topic. So a fun one. Our title today, Beyond the Exit, Building Businesses with Purpose and Integrity. Fascinated by this one. I think there is a lot of kind of discussion or complexity that comes up talking about exits. And we're going to talk about, I think, an angle that doesn't get talked about a lot. There's a lot of coverage on valuation and deal terms. We're going to talk about some of the other things that come up when when companies go through exits and things you need to think about, kind of the bigger picture. What are you going to do after? What is purpose? What is impact? What is intention? Excited for this conversation. So with all that, let's introduce our guests. First up, I've got Rusty Atkinson. He is an executive leader and authority of Integrity Edge. He focuses on the power of living and leading with integrity in a world where companies often feel like that's not the norm, and kind of figuring out how to really bring that into the workplace, into the business. He works with leaders to show them how maintaining integrity isn't just the right thing to do. It's also a powerful competitive advantage that builds trust, attracts opportunity, and unlocks stronger teams and long-term success. With that, Rusty, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Nothing says fun quite like a discussion on purpose and integrity, huh?
Yeah, exactly. It's great to have you here. I'm excited to have the conversation. Next up, I got David Marlowe. He is the author of the book, The Ikigai Way, and he works with individuals and organizations to help them align on purpose or align their purpose, work, life into an integrated whole. And he draws both from corporate leadership and personal transformation work. He helps leaders and organizations connect deeper around their purpose and having meaningful performance that will help drive a meaningful performance impact. So with all that, David, welcome to the program.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. So for our guests today, if you're watching, we're streaming on LinkedIn. We're also streaming on YouTube. If you are on LinkedIn and you have a comment or question, go ahead and drop it onto the page there. It will show up. I will try to weave it into the conversation. If you're on YouTube, I'm not going to be watching the YouTube comment, so jump over to LinkedIn if you want to leave a comment and a question, and we'll work it in. Also, if you are watching the replay on either platform, go ahead and drop comments, questions onto the channels there. We'll watch those and we'll reply to them in the coming days and weeks. So even if you're on the replay, go ahead and put your comments and questions and we'll get to them. So with all that, let's get into it. I think I want to start with just kind of understanding what do we mean by purpose. Let's kind of get people's definitions or working kind of definitions for these terms, just so we can kind of ground things a little bit. David, I'd love to start with you. Like when you talk about purpose, like what is your kind of working definition, either from an individual or company point of view?
Yeah, so I centered it around the idea of Ikigai.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talk about Ikigai, excuse me, what I mean is Ikigai is expressing your essence, who you are at your deepest levels. And we'll use the term purpose with your skills, your interests, your calling,
Mm-hmm.
all of that in harmony with whatever you're doing. So it's about that integrated self. We're going to talk about integrity.
Yeah.
That integrated self of, the real you, those things that you bring to the world that's unique to you, and all of that expressed not just in your job, but in your interactions, in enjoying an espresso, in
Mm-hmm.
any part of your life. And that's really what I talk about in terms of understanding your purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Rusty, how would you add, edit, build upon that in terms of the work that you do?
I probably before reading David's book, The Ikigai Way, I probably wouldn't have used the word purpose
Okay.
when talking about. I talk about character and I talk about integrity, but as I'm reading through and I'm kind of teaching myself, we should all be interested in continuous learning, I suppose. Teaching myself about purpose in the Ikigai Way, I recognize that they're pretty well aligned. It's this idea that there are things that are fundamentally important to me, and if the things that are fundamentally important to me are things like caring and service and quote doing the right thing, and I live my life in a way that doesn't align with that, well, that's a slippery slope in the beginning of lots of bad stuff.
Yeah.
So when I talk about character and integrity, I mean essentially at the heart of it, it's doing the right thing. The thing we all learned in kindergarten and then suddenly forgot and decided it wasn't important anymore. the golden rule or platinum rule, or however you want to talk about it. But it's this idea that it's not about me, especially as a leader. It's not about me. It's about those folks under my charge.
Yeah.
And if I lead with integrity and high character, then I can do so, and I can be super successful, and not leave just a trail of friendlies in my wake as I'm climbing the hill, right?
Yeah. So I know our kind of topic, or the way we framed this originally, was looking at exiting and kind of the whole founder journey and everything. And I certainly find, as founders, that have gone through exits, you start the company with certain intentions and big ideas, and this is why I'm doing this, and and fairly quickly it becomes kind of more mechanical, and then exits, I find, are so financially focused, right? Like everything about the exit process, the exit journey in the industry is valuation and maximizing valuation, and getting those numbers, even the kind of the language and the lore around it. Everyone's talking about these multiples, and what did you get, what did another company get, and like how to maximize those things. So I'd love to kind of get your take. Is the current kind of focus on money and valuation, is that antithetical to kind of being more purpose driven? Is it complicating? Can they align? I'd love to kind of get your take on just where you see kind of the current exit process, exit focus, in terms of what it's focused on, in terms of what we're trying to achieve in an exit, and this idea of purpose, and where you've seen this align or not align. Rusty, why don't we start with you on this one?
Yeah, I've not been the founder in exits. I have been a member of the team, executive team, during exits.
Yeah.
And what you just said about the end game is entirely focused on the financial aspect. Amen.
Yeah.
I've seen it over and over again. And I can only suppose, as the founder, the discipline to not let that happen has to start long before the end game. And I suppose, in completeness, we have to acknowledge that there are some folks who the exit, if they prioritize the exit for their priorities, it would be on the multiples.
Yep.
And people be damned, right? Or legacy be damned. It's the money that I'm looking for.
Yep.
But I don't believe that most founders, certainly not the ones that I saw flip in the end game, most founders probably didn't start that way.
Yeah.
They didn't start, the only thing I care about is having a big pile of money when the day's over. Well, they had other things they wanted to accomplish. My experience is that motivation on money doesn't keep your attention beyond a certain point, right? Money is one of those motivators that's very fleeting, right? It's super, super important when you have none, but when you have sufficient, it's no longer a sufficient motivator, right?
Yeah.
And so I think before that happens, a person ought to take the time, and that's what David talks about, reducing the noise in his book, but it's about taking the time and getting honest with yourself. What's in there that's important to you, sort of in the time of peace. So when war comes, the end game comes, you don't let yourself be wagged by the big dollar signs, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's starting the quiet time.
David, what's your take on this from a kind of the financial focus of exits versus purpose? Where do you think this is aligned and not aligned?
Well, I think it connects directly to purpose. So if you think about why was the company founded, and what is the integrity aspect of founding a company, and if you go back to, I'll connect it to Ikigai. You think about the Ikigai company is there for the people who founded and invested in it, the employees, the customers, the people that it serves, and then society as a whole. And all of that in harmony. So if we go back to that integrated self and harmonious, if you're breaking that up and focusing on just the finances or just the employees or just the customer, right? It has to be all of those things, or you're disintegrating. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the connection that I have to that. If you're, everybody needs to make a buck, right? None of us, we all want to eat. I mean, like I found that in my family, my kids wanted to eat like every day. So,
no, isn't it just so demanding?
Yeah. So you have to make money at the same time. It's like, why are you here? What is this about? Who are you serving, and who are the people? And I think like one of the last things that I witnessed in the corporate world when I was still in my corporate career, the company I worked for had bought a startup and paid a significant amount of money for it and tried
Yeah.
to integrate the company. And in the end, like 3 or 4 years later, it was basically dissolved. And these people that had like worked hard and with the founder and all that found themselves part of a big giant corporation and just absorbed into it or pushed out or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the parent company had spent a ton of money, really got no value out of it, and nobody won on that.
Yeah.
And so that's where having that integrated approach and that harmonious outcome is essential in my view.
Yeah. Rusty, I'm curious what you see as being, leaders that do a sort of a better job at kind of balancing these things, being more holistic, being more intentional around things outside of just valuation. What do they actually do? Like, what questions are they asking themselves? Like, how do they actually clarify their goals and priorities around this stuff? Like, practically, what have you seen those leaders engage in?
Intentionality is, I think, is where it all starts. I don't think that has ever happened accidentally.
Yeah.
I don't think a leader has ever discovered what their core priority is accidentally. It happens when the leader, even maybe not the leader, maybe when the person is honest with themselves and they sit down and they think, I look at my calendar, and my calendar is all about talking to investors and talking to talking to investors. But that's not why I started this. I started this because there was a particular client or a particular problem I was trying to solve, and that had all my attention. And now suddenly I look at my calendar and I'm not even paying attention to that anymore.
Yeah.
I think it starts with an intentionality of saying, what is misaligned here? I think, look, I have no training in psychiatry, any kind of psychiatric sciences or anything like that. But I'm given to believe that a lot of the mental stress and anguish that's happening, especially in folks who are successful, is when their actions, the things that they do, are not the things that they actually prioritize. The person says, my family really, that's the most important thing to me.
Yeah.
But I've never been to one of my kids' sporting events. I haven't seen them before 7 o'clock at night, as long as I can remember. Haven't made a birthday party in a long time, but they're the most important thing in my life.
Yeah.
And I think that discontinuity there between what I say is important to me and what my calendar proves is important to me, that misalignment, I think that's the beginning of a lot of problems. And in your question, what do people do that stay aligned, is acknowledging that sort of early on. I mean, right now is a good time for it. Yesterday would have been a better time for it, but acknowledging it and taking the time to rationalize that and sort of force themselves. There's a little bit of this. It takes building patterns or building processes in your life so you can actually focus on things that are important to you and not be distracted by the urgent.
Yeah.
We too oftentimes give to the urgent the things that ought to be given to the important.
Yeah, exactly. We succumb to urgency.
Yeah, 100%.
David, what's your, how have you seen, or what do you suggest people do to actually start figuring some of these questions out, right? Because you're talking about some fairly important thinking and decision making. Like, what's the process?
Yeah, I think some of it comes down to that personal purpose, right? Like, there are some people that are great founders, and there are some people that are great growers, and there are some people that are great maintainers. I myself have always been able to take a situation and make it significantly better than starting from raw nothing and turn it into something. And it's recognizing that in yourself. That, I mean, Rusty, as you were laying out those scenarios where they weren't seeing their kids and stuff, I'm like, I can tell you how not to do that. And, the whole time, right? Because they're getting out of their purpose space and getting into a space where they're not operating in harmony. And it's having that sense and understanding of yourself to recognize that and maybe bring in somebody else. I mean, you can love him or hate him, but Musk is really good at bringing in another CEO. I mean, how many people do you know like that are that driven and that egotistical, all the things, right? They can say, okay, now I'm going to give this to another CEO and let them run this. It's like, whoa, I don't know that I could do that.
So why do you think he can do that? Like, what is it that you think he's done to be able to get to the point where he can make that decision?
I do think he's self-aware enough to,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I mean, I don't know how many times he's been married. There's some self-awareness absences, but in terms of that, I think he's self-aware enough to realize that's just not his thing.
Yeah.
And that's not going to grow the way he wants to. And so he's able to give that up.
Yeah.
Plus, I think he always gets excited about the next thing.
Well, I think that's the thing that's interesting.
Maybe why he's married so many times.
Well, there's probably a connection here, right? And he's just leaned into, how he wants to navigate the world, right? Like, so,
Right.
and yeah, I may, have, comments on some of the choices, right? But I can't, I mean, if he's choosing what he wants to do, like I give him power for that, right? I think there's an alignment, there's an integrity in that.
Right.
Rusty, give me your take on how leaders kind of grapple with this, because I think it's easy to kind of take pot shots and say, oh, well, you should be doing more of this, more of that. But how, like, what have you seen, strong leaders actually, it's hard to make hard decisions around some of these things in a way that is better aligned with their values and their goals and their purpose?
Yeah. Bruce, it's talking about something that's crazy personal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's as many different ways to do that as there are colors in the rainbow. But I'd say, I thought, David, when you were talking about Musk bringing on CEOs, I thought you were going in a different direction, and that's the one that I'd like to bring in.
Go for it.
I mean, there's no point at which we shouldn't acknowledge that there are people who can speak truths in our lives that we can't see. And the entirety of the coaching marketplace is about that. Yeah. Finding people that you can trust, to whom you will give permission to speak truth to you, and then listen to that truth. I think that's, I talked about psychiatry earlier. I think that's what that's all about, right? Mm-hmm. Having somebody who's qualified to listen and who you trust enough to speak truth to you. I think if you get past a point, if I could talk about my personal journey, I made a decision long before I had any power or authority that I wasn't going to let anything get in the way of my priority, which for me was faith and family. I wasn't going to let a job get in the way of that, because I figured even if it held me back, I could be successful enough. And so I just wasn't willing. And so it was never a problem. It never became a problem. But I acknowledge that there's a whole bunch of folks who didn't do that before the power came. And now it's a lot harder decision to make when so much is riding on the next, I'm going to say the next compromise that you've got to make your priorities, right? If you find, for the leader who finds themselves in that place, already with the power, having not realigned priorities in my life with actions, I think it's time for some coaching.
Yeah,
I think you got to get serious with giving somebody that authority to point out the discontinuity, to David's point, the discontinuity in what you say is important and what is important.
Yeah. How, I'm curious on some of this decision making, like how do you help folks like really make decisions? I'll give you maybe a personal example that I certainly was kind of a challenge for me. So I was divorced when my kids were reasonably young, and one of the things that I struggled with is with the whole kind of schedules is like, okay, well, I can have 2 weeks with them over the summer and things like that. But what I realized, what was really important to me was one-on-one time, and I intentionally chose a very different schedule where I took each one of the kids solo for a week every summer rather than all of them at the same time. And it was a trade-off, right? And I had to, not only was it a trade-off in terms of the type of time that I was spending with my kids, it was also a trade-off in terms of working out, the custody schedule and all that kind of things. But it was a time where I was very clear, like this was really important to me, like that the kind of time I want to have and the type of father I want to be, I want to have that one-on-one time. And I realized I wasn't going to get, and I had to give that thing up. And that was definitely some trade-offs. How do you help leaders kind of find those trade-offs? Because I think at the end of the day, that's really kind of the challenge. It's not like, oh, I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think I want to do that. The problem is in order to do that, you have to give up something else. And how do you help leaders kind of clarify that? I'm curious, David, what you've like where you've seen leaders kind of make these trade-offs, what has helped them identify that and then sit with the consequences of it.
Yeah. I liked what Rusty pointed out earlier. A lot of this is about just intentionality. And the example you just gave is a great one. I mean, you had an intention and you did that with some thought and some some purpose. And it is, I mean, sometimes it's just starting with getting the noise down, because a lot of times our decisions are made because of pressure, because of urgency, because of noise. I share in the book, I had a position when I was with Metavante where I ran the network operations center and data center, where 1 out of every 5 financial transactions in the U.S. was processed. And it was like a mess. And I was getting pages. That's how old the story is. Pages, 1,500 pages a month. 1,500. The way I found out about it is that's how much we paid for. And there was like an overage charge. My boss was yelling at me for getting an overage charge. I'm like, well, here, have the pager. I don't know what it is. But I was so distracted that I couldn't make any intentional or thoughtful decision. Right. So it's getting that noise down. And that took some process and some Kaizen and a whole bunch of other things. But once I got that noise down, then I could start taking a look at what did I want and what was the best way to operate and how could I stay true to what I valued and what the company needed and all of the things. So to me, it's almost always, and I will say in 99 out of 100 cases where I start working with someone, the first thing is get the noise level down in their life so they can hear that quiet voice of purpose.
Yeah. Rusty, any insights there in terms of the trade-offs that people need to make?
Yeah, only that your story kind of illustrated a truth that we should never waste a good disaster or a good catastrophe. Right? I mean, it was a forcing function for you. Right? You had to make a decision. There was a time that happened and everything got disrupted and tipped over, and you could either have just flowed or not waste it and take a chance, take a time rather to step in mind and say, what's truly important here? It's a catastrophe anyway. So let me see what I can do to make the best of it. I think you're going to find that a lot of folks it's unfortunate because it'd be better if you made these decisions. It is better when you make these decisions and it's peaceful. But if you find yourself in that time of chaos and everything has changed, well, then take a beat. Take a beat, see if it's changing the way you want it to change, or is it just, same story, different verse. Because I mean, just don't waste the catastrophe. That's all I'm saying.
I want to get to this topic of kind of the communities that companies operate in, leaders operate in, because I think that's one that I certainly have seen not talked about enough or not thought about enough, particularly with founders as they're going through exits. And how do you help founders kind of appreciate, leaders in general, kind of appreciate kind of the ecosystem, the community, kind of the bigger context in which they're operating, and cultivate kind of at least an appreciation, if not some level of responsibility, accountability, stewardship towards that? Like, give me some examples or give me some thoughts on how founders can kind of think a little bit more about this, because I think that's one that doesn't come up enough. David, I'd love to hear from you on this one.
Well, one of the things, and Rusty kind of alluded to this earlier, that is there's those formal messages, right? Like I say, I value my family, or I value you, or we're a family, and all that. Then there's the informal messages, like sending messages that we got to work and stay late and get things done, right? And that force people to not be able to be with their family and things like that. And so understanding and ensuring that there's an integrated element of that, right, is what we're saying, what we're living. I remember I had just taken over a team that had been kind of poorly managed for a while, and I was staying late one night. And normally I try and leave right at on time because I want to set that example. And I stood up and I saw like the whole team was there. Like, what are you guys doing? They're like, we're working. Like, is something wrong? Is there something going on? No, this is what we do all the time. I'm like, okay, well, first of all, this is the last night you're doing that. And second of all, what is it that's prompting this? And it was the volume of work that they were being asked to do just almost required them to do that. Meanwhile, my boss was telling me, I don't think we need as many people as we have because they don't. I said, you're sending the wrong message to him. Plus, I just don't want to see you guys ever here after that. Let's work on what's going on. And so the informal messages in that case they were being sent, weren't aligning with what they said. And this company was really all about family and regular hours and all of that. So that's the first step.
Yeah, it's interesting. We in my technology company, we had a general rule of sustainable pace, right? So it was 40-hour weeks, and I think I worked 2 weekends over the course of a decade of working in that company, and I was generally home by 6:30, at least 4 out of 5 nights a week and stuff. But it was interesting because, yeah, yes, it was a constraint, but that constraint also forced us to be much better. Like,
Mhm.
it forced us to kind of prioritize, have good systems, be super efficient, right? So as much as it was this kind of benefit or this thing, like it was a lifestyle decision, it actually became a really powerful forcing function in the business to really kind of make sure that we were disciplined, and we couldn't be sloppy because we didn't have time. We didn't have time to be sloppy.
Parkinson's law, right?
Yeah,
Parkinson's
exactly.
law kicks in. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Rusty, what's your how have you seen people grapple with this?
I've seen a lot of people not grapple with it, Bruce.
Yeah, exactly. or poorly grapple with it.
But when they grab it, it looks broadly, you'd say paying it forward kind of thing, acknowledging that I reach where I reach because people helped me along the way, and there's nothing I can do to thank them for that now. Yeah, I can use words, but there's nothing I can do to materially thank them for it.
Yeah.
So instead, acknowledge that there are other people on their journey and do the same, right?
Yeah.
Reach out with no hope or desire or even idea of payback, but rather acknowledge that it's the service, the minimum service that you owe for the folks who helped you along the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think where I have seen it, the motivation is because someone helped me, I'm going to help someone. And that can be super powerful, especially some folks that have enormous spheres of influence.
Yeah.
Can make a huge difference.
Yeah. I'll even go so far as to say, I think some of the best leaders I've worked with don't even think about it as like pay back or pay forward, because they get just as much out of being a mentor or helping people out as the other person, right?
Yeah.
So it's not even like, oh, well, like this is depleting me. I mean, they do it because it actually gives them energy, gives them resources, give them perspective, right? So I think that when they frame it as being, I'm going to do this because it's good for me now, right? It's not like, oh, I've got to pay somebody back, or I'm going to get paid back at some point.
That was a trigger for me. I haven't been doing this long. I've had this mindset for a long time, but I haven't been sharing that mindset for long, just 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
I was CIO at Signify Health when we were acquired by CVS. And in that transition, I was out of a role along with just a ton of folks on my team, like 30 some odd % of my team, like that fast.
Yeah.
And in the months after that, I was dealing with, what am I going to do next? Not like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do next? But really, I'm curious what I'm going to do next. But in that process, there's just so much you can control. Looking for a new gig, one that you like, there's only so many levers that are your responsibility to pull. Effort's one of them. Response to your effort, that's not a lever you have anything to do with. So I found over those 4 or 5 months between gigs, one of the things that I found deeply satisfying was the thing I could control, and that was helping other folks. The 33% of my team, or 30 whatever % of my team that were looking for gigs, just leaning into them, helping them where I could. I have way more gray in my beard than they had in their beards, so gray's proof of experience, and so just leaning into that. And I'm just saying that to echo what you just said. I think a whole bunch of folks is just like that was therapeutic for me. That giving back, paying back, or paying forward rather, was therapeutic for me in that season. And I think a lot of leaders maybe the same way.
Yeah, I agree. We're going to hit time here in a minute. I'd love to get just one final kind of suggestion, maybe question that you suggest founders kind of ask themselves, as they're kind of going through their founder journey, to help them kind of get more in touch with this stuff. Like what would you have them do, or what would you have them sit with? David, I'd be curious what you'd tell founders.
Yeah, I always ask people when we're talking about just even Ikigai and get them going on that is, what's your tennis ball? I used to have a dog that dog would chase a tennis ball as long as I was willing to throw it. He would skip eating to chase that tennis ball. And so I always encourage people to start with thinking about, what's your tennis ball? What would you do that you might forget to eat? Like for me, I mean, I write, and I'm an author now, and I'll be writing, and my wife's like, "Do you want dinner? It's cold," And oh, okay. So even just any kind of reflection like that can get you understanding yourself in a deeper way is a great place to start.
That's excellent.
Rusty, what question would you give founders?
Yeah, Bruce, nothing as good as that. Tennis ball. I mean, that's just jumps off the page. No, but the spirit of that is that I wish there were an easy button, target, easy button. Is it not target? It's what is it? Staples,
yeah.
Button.
Oh yeah. Now you're showing your gray hair there.
Yeah.
Come on now. But it's that the question that's going to trigger that introspection is so very, very different for each one of us. So if I was talking I would do a whole bunch of listening first, Bruce, and see if I could discern what that trigger is. But it would essentially be the one that gets past the noise down to that unvoiced priority, that itch that's not being scratched, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
If and when you can find that thing, it's got a way of waking you up at 6 o'clock in the morning excited, right?
Yeah.
It's got a way of, to David's point, allowing you to ignore all kinds of distractions so that you can get laser focused. It just takes time to get to that heart of the matter. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's true. I think it is a process, and it does take a little time. I want to make sure we get contact information out there. David, if people want to find out more about you, more about the book, what's the best way to get that?
Yeah, sure. I'm on LinkedIn, easy to find there, and answer messages there, or my newsletter, IkiQuest, which is ikiquest.substack.com, or you can get the book.
There it is.
And there's information in there where you can reach out to me as well with questions on the book.
Awesome. And Rusty, if people want to get a hold of you.
Yeah, first I'd say David's book, it's the kind of book that you want to read, and then you want to go back to the beginning with a notepad and a pen and read it again. It's the good stuff. I'm on LinkedIn. I work a full-time gig, the head of technology for a healthcare company. This is me doing something that I'm passionate about sort of on the side. But I also do have the book.
I was gonna say, good.
There you go.
And this is a book published last year. And it's essentially a promise that you can grow your career. You can be just incredibly successful without compromising your integrity, your character. And then it reads as a playbook, identifying and avoiding the 6 stumbling blocks that happen to folks. But I'm on LinkedIn. Check me out on LinkedIn and drop me a DM. Love to chat with you.
Perfect. If anyone is to get a hold of me, just bruce@eckfeldt.com is my email. Eckfeldt.com is my website, and obviously LinkedIn. David, Rusty, thank you so much for taking the time today. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Mine too.
Thanks for everyone for joining us today. Again, if you're watching the replay, go ahead and leave comments and questions there. We'll check those out, and we'll see you on the next LinkedIn Live. Thanks, everyone.